You got me up? Yep. Make sure it's showing on the webcast as volume up and down. Okay. Evening, everybody. Here we go, try number 2 with webcasting and trying to keep everybody connected as we are going. Again, I find it an awesome blessing that Yah already had the ability for us to webcast in place before this even happened. And he has that way of doing things where he prepares us before we even know that there's going to be a need. And I definitely think that's awesome. I do want to take a moment to catch you up on a few things. First of all, tonight is the first night of a new moon. It was sighted in Israel, so we would count it as the beginning of the month. But in the midst of everything else, for it to be the beginning of a year, there has to be barley that can be actually harvested in Israel. We have not gotten that report, so tonight will be a new moon. We just don't know if it'll be a special new moon of a beginning of the year or not. We'll find that out tomorrow, and then we'll try and get that on the website as well as on our Facebook so that people are informed in that regard. Remember, if it's not the beginning of the year, thus the barley was not ready, then guess what? Passover isn't until like May 7th or May 8th. We have an entire month and 14 days from now for us to prepare, which may even give us the chance to actually be together. Now again, hold off on getting too excited, but one way or another, Yah is going to glorify his name through this entire process. So I want to quickly go through what tonight is going to look like. I want to talk about Psalm 91 for a moment. It was something someone at Walmart gave me today. And I just want to clarify something. Once we do that, I've got a song that's been very encouraging to me. We're going to go into Shema and go through the Shema really quick, go into a little bit of prayer time, and then we're actually going to get into some praise and worship, and then into Bible study. Tonight's Bible study, we're going to focus on Saul versus David and lessons focusing on the issue of fear. And I think this is what Yah brought me to when I was thinking about and praying about the idea of what is important today. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and look at Psalm 91. And I was very blessed by the gentleman. The gentleman came up. He had to show me his Star of David and his connection to the Jewish people. And in that regard, he's like, you need to see this. And he was bringing it to me like he had no fear in regard to everything going on. He goes, you know what? My father's got it taken care of. And I'm not trying to not say that Yah himself doesn't have everything taken care of, because I know he does. But when he was using the one verse, it made me a little bit squeamy. And you know, there's a big difference between a brick and a rock. And that brick can be something that was man-made or pulled out to try and portray something, and I don't want it to be a brick. So I'm going to start with just Psalm 91, verse 1. He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of Yehovah, he is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I will trust. Now again, this is perfect, because the issue is, where do I find my hope? Where do I find my protection? Where do I find my trust? And invariably, that's going to be with Yah. I'm going to jump down to verse 5. You shall not be afraid of the terror by night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that walks in darkness, nor the destruction that lay waste at noonday. Verse 7, 1,000 may fall at your side, and 10,000 at your right hand, but it shall not come near you. Only with your eyes shall you look and see the reward of the wicked, because you have made Yehovah, who is my refuge, even the Most High, your dwelling place. No evil shall befall you, nor shall any plague come near your dwelling. And that is the verse that the gentleman was making a point of, that no plague will come near your dwelling, right? And again, he was hoping in that verse. And please don't hear me wrong. By Psalm 91, we are all protected in the hands of Yah. There's no question, and I would not want to change that. But this verse talks about plagues that go back to Egypt. And it goes to the issue of the curses in Leviticus 26 and Deuteronomy as well. It's not speaking of this plague. It's not speaking of a specific sickness. Because we know, as believers, guess what? We get sick. It happens. And so people are going to go, if they're going to start using this verse, I don't have to worry. I don't have to be careful. I don't need to be cautious. This verse then is being taken out of context. Now, I'm going to back up just a moment. Can I trust that Yah's will be done? Yes. Can I trust that I'm in his hands? Yes. But if we become sick, it doesn't automatically mean we've done something wrong. And it doesn't mean that there's an issue that has to be resolved. It may just be something he is putting us through, that he's refining us through. And I think that's important. Now, what I want to do is go ahead and play you a song. We're going to have the words up here because it's a video. The song is called Even Then. And it's been an encouragement to me for over the last few months because it talks about the idea that no matter what's going on in our life, if it's getting darker, lighter, things are going well, or things are going bad, you know what? Yah hasn't changed. He's the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So I want to offer to you and see if it's a blessing to you or as much a blessing to you as it has been to me. Because when I feel that concern or anxiety, this song comes to my mind, and it helps me sort of recenter myself and remember, okay, I'm standing on Yah, and he's my rock. Even then.
On the nights when the dark lasts a little bit longer, when the wind and the storm is a little bit stronger, when the fear in my heart digs a little bit deeper, when my faith to stand gets a little bit weaker, where could I run to? Where could I go? Even when it feels like my world is shaking, even when I've had all that I can take, I know you never let me go. Whoa. And even when the waters won't stop rising, even when I'm caught in the dead of the night, I know no matter how big it is, you're with me even then. And the days up ahead look a little bit brighter, but the grip of the past holds a little bit tighter. I'm reminded your grace never asked for perfection. Oh, I'm restored 'cause I'm yours and I stand forgiven. Yeah. Even when it feels like my world is shaking, even when I've had all that I can take, I know you never let me go. Whoa. And even when the waters won't stop rising, even when I'm caught in the dead of the night, I know no matter how big it is, you're with me.
when we feel the anxiety coming on, to go into praise and worship, because in doing so, we're drawing closer to him, and we can feel his peace and his rest come upon our life. And those situations that we're going through now are times when he's just tapping us on the shoulder saying, come on, come in, come close, come into the house. Let's talk for a little while, or let's just be still with each other. So with that, we're going to go ahead and do the Shema. And we'll do it as we've been doing it, where we'll go the Hebrew, the Spanish, and then into our English. All right. Shema Israel, Yahovah Eloheinu, Yahovah Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod, Malhuto, Leolam Vaed. Escucha, O Israel, Yahovah nuestro Elohim, Yahovah es uno. Bendito sea el nombre glorioso de su reino por toda la eternidad. Hear, O Israel, Yahovah our Elohim, Yahovah is one. Blessed be the name of his glorious kingdom forever and ever. Amen. Father, we come before you right now. We know that you are the God of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And we know that this sickness is definitely meant to be a sign to us, to wake us up, for us to be serious about the times that we live in. We know, number one, as we get ready for Passover, we see the parallel with the plague coming on the world as you brought those 10 plagues on Egypt. We see the connection in regard that when it came time for the Passover, you had the people stay in the house, not go out, even in the darkness of the night, stay in the house. And for the most part, we're dealing with that as well today. And so, Father, in the midst of this, the world can't see the connection to Passover, nor can they see the connection to what you're doing. So for us, Father, continue to keep our eyes open. Continue to help us to not focus within, but to focus on you, and then our neighbors that are around us. To look for opportunities to reach out, to care for someone, whether we have some extra toilet paper to go around and pass out, whether we are in line at a grocery store and we decide to pay for the person in front of us, or pay part of the bill for the person behind us, or even just get a gift card, and as we walk around Walmart, Father, to be able to give it out. Give us opportunities to look for open doors, to reach out to those that are in need right now, Father. You ask us to be a light in the darkness, and we are definitely in a time of darkness where anxiety and fear is more the plague that is rapidly covering and moving through the entire earth. And Father, we know that peace can only be found in you. But your hand is always strong, and it's always reaching out to those in need. So let us be your hand and be with us. Amen and amen. So we're just going to go ahead and take a moment and have some prayer time. If you guys want to sit, you can sit. What we're going to do, and we're going to play some music. I'm just going to start off with some prayer. I'm going to stop and just let the music continue playing. I know that can be uncomfortable to be like, well, how long do I pray and such? But here are some things I want you to think about. Praying for your family. Praying for Ariel. But when we get beyond that, praying for our coworkers, those within our community. Praying for our country in these times, that this is a sign we could easily go away more from Yah or go closer to Yah. And what are we going to do through this time? And then for the entire world. And even if it comes to a point where your mind stops thinking, you know what, that's okay. Because in prayer, sometimes it's just a moment of being still. That's all it is. And knowing that he's still God. So we're going to go ahead and play just some instrumental music in the background. Father, in this time, we know that prayer is powerful, but it in itself is not powerful. It's powerful because if we're seeking you and your will always happens, and your word always accomplishes its purpose. And so, Father, we would ask that you send forth your word through this time right now. That people's eyes would be opened, that mountains would be brought low and valleys would be brought up, that those who need to be humbled would be humbled, and those that need to be exalted would be exalted. That your times, that your words and your torah, that it would come to the light of those who believe in you and know you. We lift up our communities and our community leaders, give them wisdom. Give us patience as we go through this. We know you're teaching us to wait. Be with the leaders of our country. Give them wisdom in the steps that we need to go forth, that your will would be done. Draw us close, Father. Help us to remember that we're in the shadow of your wings. Help us remember each day to start off by saying, Father, forgive me. And remembering the words of the prodigal, if only I could be a servant in your house today. And help us to remember Father, it's fitting to the reality that the music came to the point of let God arise. And that's our prayer. That every knee would bow, that every tongue would confess. That they would come to the light of your face. Father, in your scriptures you talk about if your people will humble themselves and they will pray, then you will look upon them and you will hear their prayers and you will come and heal their land. Our first prayer, Father, is for Israel and your people. But even beyond that, that you gather all of Israel, and that's every nation, tribe, and tongue. So many know parts of your truth. Open their eyes, Father, to see the light of your truth. Amen and amen. So we're going to go into some praise and worship. We've got 3 songs. No dance, so you'll have to be doing your dances on your own in that regard. That doesn't mean you can't dance where you are. There's no issue. We're just going to be projecting dance as the praise and worship goes on. But as I said before, and it fits into the study today, when Saul struggled, when he was being cursed and was struggling with anxiety and fear, David came in and he played praise songs. And it brought Saul to peace. And that's important, guys, because only in Yah's presence are we going to find peace. That's the only place. There's no other place. You can't buy an ointment that's going to give you peace. You can't, no TV show, no radio show, only his presence. So let's give him praise.
Fell Higher than the mountains that I face, stronger than the power of the grave, constant in the trial and the change. This one thing remains. This one thing remains. Your love never fails, it never gives up, it never runs out on me. Your love never fails, it never gives up, it never runs out on me. Your love never fails, it never gives up, it never runs out on me. Your love never fails and never gives up and never runs out on me. And on and on and on and on it goes. Yes, it overwhelms and satisfies my soul. And I'll never ever have to be afraid, 'cause this one
Father, thank you that your love does not change and you don't disappear. You're always there. We may not always see you or feel you, but you're always there. We ask right now, even as we're walking through the darkness right now, help us to remember that you're the great Savior and deliverer, and our deliverance is just out of sight. You're just asking us to take one step at a time, knowing that you're going to deliver us. Deliver me.
Deliver me as I call upon your name. Be the God who breaks my chains, all the shackles of my shame. Deliver me from the lies that wreck my heart. Come and lead me from the dark. Father, show how strong you are. deliver me. Oh Lord, deliver me. Oh, and I will trust in only you. For you will bring the victory. You will bring the victory. All your promises are true. It doesn't matter what I see. It doesn't matter what I see. Deliver me. Even when I am afraid, when the world around me shakes, I know you will never change. Deliver me. Oh Lord, deliver me. Oh, and I will trust in only you. For you will bring the victory. You will bring the victory. All your promises are true. It doesn't matter what I see. It doesn't matter what I see. Oh, deliver me. And into your hands I will surrender all. Take it all. Oh, let my life bring you praise. With all I am, I worship all you are. For you are my only refuge and strength. Oh, deliver me. Deliver me. Into your hands I will surrender all. Take it all. Oh, let my life bring you praise. With all I am, I worship all you are. For you are my only refuge and strength. Oh, deliver me. Deliver me.
And Father, while we may give that prayer out and cry it out to you, the reality is it's already set in motion that you're going to deliver us. It's just a matter of waiting for it to happen by your will and in your timing. And help us to wait. We know it's going to take patience. We know there are going to be moments where we're going to be afraid and we're going to be anxious. Help us to come into you and into the hiding place at that moment. And know that you're with us through whatever we're going to go through. Amen and amen. All right, so we're going to get into study. So if you do me a favor, we're going to go to 1 Samuel 17. We're going to be looking at the David and Goliath story. And this is going to be strange because I'll be honest, if you've ever been to Bible study with me, it's always interactive and I'm asking questions and things. So today is going to be all about me learning, or the beginning of me learning in this new world or in this new existence. What I have up here on the board before we start reading is the idea of us looking at Saul versus David. And as we look at Saul, as both of them are going to have to face the issue of the person who is Goliath, this major problem that is coming against Israel. And the focus I want you to see is that fear is definitely almost like a plague in the situation. And we may think that COVID-19 is spreading rapidly. COVID-19 is nothing compared to fear. And in today's world, as much as COVID-19 has gotten to percentages of people, larger percentages of people are now afraid. Larger percentages of people are anxious. And what I want us to see is the difference of Saul versus David. And my prayer is that we are all more of a Saul than a David. Sorry, let me back up. More of a David and less of a Saul. And so to do that, I want us to look at, well, what caused David to be a little bit different? Because I think both of them are in the same experience. Both of them are still going to see Goliath. Both of them are going to hear the same words. But their reaction is completely different, right? So 1 Samuel 17, we're going to start with verses 1 through 3. Starting with verse 1, the Philistines gathered their armies together to battle, and were gathered at Socoh, which belongs to Judah. They camped between Socoh and Azekah and Ephes Damim, and Saul and the men of Israel were gathered together, and they encamped in the valley of Elah and drew up in battle array against the Philistines. And the Philistines stood on a mountain on one side, and Israel stood on a mountain on the other side, and a valley was between them. And the first point I want to make sort of connects back to what we've been teaching on Shabbats, and that's the issue of, remember that mountains represent nations or powerful people, right? And so here you have two mountains that are facing off, and there's a valley in between them. And we can make a lot of different connections, but these Philistines are coming against Yah's people. Why are they coming against Yah's people? Because Yah uses them over and over as the people would fall away to go, all right, you know what? You fell away. I'm going to bring them against you. Okay, now you repent. Well, now I'm going to bring you a deliverer, and that deliverer is going to save you, right? So I think it's important we start off, all right, we've got the picture, two mountaintops. Israel has come out. The Philistines have come out. There's a valley in between. And then that's where we're going to start with verses 4 through 11. Verse 4, and a champion went out from the camp of the Philistines named Goliath from Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. Now I'm going to stop for a moment because it goes through a lot of descriptions. So if we're going to talk about 6 cubits, just to give you perspective, a cubit would be about from your elbow to the end of your hand. And so that would be give you a general idea or a span. And so if we're talking 6 of them, 2, 3, so this is already 3. We'll say 4, 5. So higher than my hand right now, which may not even be on the screen, who knows. We're talking about someone that tall. So you can imagine maybe at the height of that screen and you going out against them. And no matter how far back in the valley you are, he is a formidable foe. He is someone to be very scared of because, and it goes into great detail of how much weight he has on and how great his armor is. And you have this undefeatable enemy that's now come against them. We're going to jump to verse 8. And he stood and cried out in the armies of Israel and said, "Why have you come to line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine, and you the servants of Saul? Choose a man for yourself and let him come down to me. If he is able to fight with me and kill me, then we will be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then you shall be our servants and serve us." And the Philistines said, "I defy the armies of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together." When Saul and all Israel heard these words of the Philistine, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. Now, there's a number of things for us to delve into here. The main point what I want you to see is that when this situation happened, and so like today, let's imagine for a moment that COVID-19 is our Goliath. And let's be honest, you put it on TV, give it 30 or 40 minutes, I can promise you the anxiety is already starting to rise. It's already growing. And I promise, too, that in the sight of Israel, the more they saw Goliath, the bigger the stories got. I mean, we heard in regard to like a fishing story, oh yeah, I caught a fish this big. And the next time you tell a story, it was this big. And then so on. You can imagine, even look at Goliath, the problem continues to get worse. And that worse is not the actual problem, it's the multiplication of the fear that's in us of the problem. And how in the world is that problem going to get resolved? What I think is important, too, is back then, you could have two armies battle it out. And that would not be an issue. But one of the ways that they would resolve it without all the killing is they would have a champion from each side come and they would battle. And whoever won that battle, well, they would win the complete battle and the other would surrender themselves. What I think is intriguing here is that notice that it's not only Saul that's afraid. And remember, if you read back, when Saul was anointed, he was head and shoulders taller than all the Israelites that were around him. So he stood out among the Israelites. As king, he would have been the natural person to actually go and be the one to actually go and do this fight. What we see here is he becomes afraid. But what I think is more important is that the fear is infectious. What we're going to see as you read through is there is not a single person in the entire army that's willing to now go out and face Goliath. So where did it start with? What seed did it start with? What seed did it start with? And it starts with them looking to their leader. And who was their leader? It was Saul. And Saul saw it and said, this is impossible. I can't. And so it just completely infected everybody else. And I think this is significant because when we talk about facing the enemy, and let's be honest, anything where we become anxious or afraid, the enemy loves those moments. But here's what's important in this situation. We have Goliath, and Goliath can definitely be a physical idea of the enemy coming against us, something bigger than we are, stronger than we are. But here's what's important too. At the very same time that we're facing this enemy that is more powerful than we could ever understand, we have the enemy whispering in our ear at the very same time, you can't do this. You know what? You're not going to be able to handle this. This is too hard. It's going to take too long. And so we have not only the enemy that's facing us here, we have the very enemy in our mind. And those doubts and the fears that are coming up. And we've got to be very careful of that. When we're going to look at David in a moment, David comes in. What you're not going to see in any of it is he sees the situation completely different. Now, first and foremost, why? Because he's not there. When the actual first challenge comes up, David's not there. So he's not infected by Saul. He's not infected by what's going on. But two, David understands that Yah is greater than what's going on. And he's been trained and taught through different experiences as being a shepherd. And those experiences tell him that, you know what? There's nothing out here that Yah can't take care of. And so it's just a question of, is it Yah's will in seeking it out? Let's go ahead and look at verse 15 and 16. But David occasionally went and returned from Saul to feed his father's sheep at Bethlehem. The Philistine drew near and presented himself 40 days, morning and evening. Now I want you to imagine every single day, morning and evening, the Philistine is going out. if you read on, Jesse's like, you know what? I want you to go find out how your brothers are doing. Go ahead and take these supplies, give them to the commander. And in this regard, you can bring back report, because there's no doubt that Jesse's a little bit concerned because they're going off to battle, right? Verse 20. So David rose early in the morning, left the sheep with the keeper. Now, important, notice that David, the reason he's not is he's the actual shepherd for his family. He's the one watching over the sheep. So he leaves them with a keeper. He took the things and went as Jesse had commanded him. He came to the camp as the army was going out to fight and shouting for the battle. For the Israel and the Philistines had drawn up in battle array, army against army. And David left his supplies in the hand of the supply keeper and ran to the army and came and greeted his brothers. As he talked with them, there was the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, coming up from the armies of the Philistines and spoke according to the same words. So David heard them, and all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, what'd they do? Look at verse 24 there at the end. Can you see it? See, there's one moment we've already known where Saul was afraid of him. But look at what happens here at the end of verse 25. Or sorry, verse 26. No? Is it 25? I got to get back where I was. Dreadly afraid. They ran from him. Yeah, end of verse 24. When they saw the man, they fled from him and were dreadfully afraid. So the men of Israel, have you seen this man who has come up? Surely he has come up to defy Israel. And it shall be the man who kills him, the king will enrich with great riches. He will give his daughter, he will give his father's house exemption from taxes in Israel. And what I find intriguing is when we're afraid, we think that, you know what, I'm going to offer some of the most important things. I'm going to throw money at it. I'm going to throw this at it. I'm going to throw that. And that's, you know what, someone's going to stand up. And here's the reality. Once fear has control, it doesn't matter what you offer as a bargain. The reality is this. By offering his daughter's hand in marriage, he offers the possibility that this person could be a part of the royal line. Because if all the other line fades or falls out, this person could be. And then on top of that, I mean, let's be honest. No taxes forever? Who wouldn't want that? Right? Isn't it interesting in the world today that we're sort of struggling with the same thing? In the midst of all this fear, there's a question of our finances and what are we going to do and how are we going to deal with that, right? Now, David's coming into that situation. Verse 26, Then David spoke to the men who stood by him, saying, What shall be done for the man who kills a Philistine and takes away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? For David, he's like, really? Really? You guys, don't you realize that if Yah is for us, who can be against us? Right? If this man is coming, and it says he defies Israel, and this is important because we may not see it as we're reading it, but Israel, it can be contender with Yah or contender with God. It also can be mighty one of God. So he comes out and says, Oh, Israel, oh, mighty one of God, where are you? And they flee and they're afraid. David's not. Now, there's a lot of clues into why. One of the clues it talks about earlier in the scripture, and I think this is verse 8. So if you do me a favor, let's look back at chapter 17, verse 8. In verse 8, when he stood and cried out to the armies of Israel and said to them, Why have you come out to line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine, and you the servants of who? Now, for those that are looking, it says servants of Saul, right? The question being is, why'd they use this phrase? It could have been servants of your God. It could have been called Israel. Why are they the servants of Saul? Now, this is important because if we go back to 1 Samuel 15, 10 to 12, and I'm not going there, you can go there on your own. After Saul is told to go and wipe out the Amorites, I believe, and he comes back and he hasn't, he actually builds a monument to himself. This is important. If he's built a monument to himself, the idea is that Saul is putting himself up as an idol, as a god. And if the God is afraid, what do you think the people are? Right? Are the people going to be afraid? Absolutely. If they're the mighty one that they look to is afraid, absolutely they're going to be afraid. Let's go ahead and look. Jump down to verse 29. And David said, "What have I done now? Is there not a cause?" Then he turned from him toward another and said the same thing, and the people answered him as the first ones did. And when the words which David spoke were heard, they reported them to Saul. And he sent for him. Then David said to Saul, "Let no man's heart fail because of him whose servant will go and fight with the Philistines." And Saul said to David, "You are not able to go against the Philistines to fight with him, for you are a youth, and he a man of war from his youth." Now what's important here is that a lot of people make David out to be a 13-year-old, a 12-year-old, most picture books do. This youth could be a 19-year-old. Remember, at age 20 in Torah, you are able to go into the census. Also, the reality, if you didn't go into the census, you also could go off to war. Now, he also could be age 20, but that Jesse has already sent so many of his sons, and David is needed, he may be going back. Now, you might sit back and go, then why is Saul going to let him go off and actually go to war? Well, let's go back just a little bit. 1 Samuel 16. If you go ahead and turn with me there. So Saul has sinned. David has been anointed. The minute David is anointed, it says that a spirit of Yah departs and a distressing spirit. And this is the idea of, I think, to be like cursing is coming upon Saul, where he's anxious and afraid all the time. And this is when he starts asking, is there anyone out there who can help me as I feel this anxiety and depression and all of this? Verse 17. So Saul said to his servants, "Provide me now a man who can play well, and bring him to me." Then one of the servants answered and said, "Look, I have seen the son of Jesse, the Bethlehemite, who is skillful in playing, a mighty man of valor, a man of war, prudent in speech." Now this is important, guys, because already Saul is understanding and is going to meet him, and the reputation that he is a man of war. He is a mighty warrior. More importantly is that last part of verse 18, and Yahovah is with him. Therefore Saul sent messengers to Jesse, "Send your son David, who is with the sheep." And again, we see that idea that he's a shepherd. And Jesse took a donkey loaded with bread, a skin of wine, and a young goat, and sent them to his son, and David to Saul. And David came to Saul and stood before him, and he loved him greatly, and became his, yes, look at what it says, David became Saul's armor bearer. You don't choose that lightly. The person who's going to be there to guard your back and be there as a part of passing weapons and providing that support. And Saul sent to Jesse saying, "Please let David stay." So when we go to chapter 17 and we see him going, "You know what, I'll go ahead and let you go." There's a reason why. David already had a reputation. The thought was, even then, that Yah was with him. And again, he was already an armor bearer. But I think what's important too is that David not only was a warrior in regard to this mighty man, but he understood spiritual warfare. And how did he understand that? He knew that praise and worship was a part of that spiritual warfare that needed to go on. Looking ahead at chapter 17, verse 34. And David said to Saul, "Your servant used to keep his father's sheep. And when a lion or bear came and took a lamb out of the flock, I went out after it and I struck it, and I delivered the lamb from its mouth. And whenever it rose against me, I caught it by its beard and struck it and killed it. Your servant has killed both lion and bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, seeing that he has defied the armies of the living God." Moreover, David said, "Yehovah, who delivered me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear, he will deliver me from the hand of the Philistine." And I think this is important. Just like I talk about the idea that aren't we blessed that Yah already had the webcast ability long before this problem came up. What David is saying is, I'm already prepared for this moment. I've already faced down a lion. I've already faced down a bear for mere sheep. How much more Yah's people? Where Yah is the shepherd, right? How much more for his Father in heaven than for his Father on earth? And we see this even with Joseph. Joseph becomes the head of his father's house. Then he becomes the head of Potiphar's house. Then he becomes the head of prison, and then he becomes the head of Egypt. Yah always has a way of preparing us for the situation beforehand. And I don't mean in supplies. I'm talking about the nature of who we are as we go into whatever test we're going through. Keep your hand in 1 Samuel 17. We're going to jump up to Romans chapter 8 for a moment. Romans chapter 8. Looking at verse 24. (24 to 32). For we were saved in this hope. But hope that is seen is not hope. For why does one still hope for what he sees? But if we hope for what we do not see, we eagerly wait for it with perseverance. Likewise, the Spirit, Yah's presence, also helps in our weakness, for we not know what we should pray for as we ought. But the Spirit, Yah himself, makes intercession for us, with groanings that cannot be uttered. Now he who searches the heart knows the mind of the Spirit is, because he makes intercession for the saints according to the will of Elohim. And we know all things work together for the good of those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose. And I think that's important. Even the situation we're going through right now is going to be a situation, and you can turn back to 1 Samuel 17, for our good. Whether we get sick or don't get sick, whether this ends in a few months or whether it progresses longer than we expect, it will be for our good, by his will, one way or another. Jumping back to 1 Samuel, chapter 17, starting with verse end of 37. And Saul said to David, "Go, and Yehovah be with you." So Saul clothed David with his armor, and he put a bronze helmet on his head. He also clothed him with a coat of mail. David fastened his sword to his armor, and he tried to walk, for he had not tested them. And David said to Saul, "I cannot walk with these, for I have not tested." Basically, I haven't fought with them. I can't use them. I wouldn't be good with them. Verse 40, look at what he takes. And he took his staff in his hand. Isn't that interesting? His shepherd's staff. It's an interesting choice. I'm going to pick up my shepherd's staff, and that's what I'm going to start walking out with. And he chose for himself 5 smooth stones from the brook. So he has his shepherd's staff, and automatically he goes, you know what? And he heads down to this body of water, this river or a brook. And he pulls out these 5 stones. And he puts them in the shepherd's bag. So we have another focus of him being a shepherd. In a pouch which he had. And his sling in his hand, and he drew near the Philistine. So the Philistine came and began drawing near David. And a man who bore the shield went before him. And when the Philistine looked about and saw David, he disdained him, for he was only a youth, ruddy and good-looking. So the Philistine said to David, am I a dog that you come to me with sticks? At this point, probably a distance that he can see David, the only weapon David has is his staff. Right? It's the only weapon he can see. The sling would have been very small, and then his satchel or bag with the rocks. Not. And the Philistine said to David, come to me, and I will give you your flesh to the birds of the air and beasts of the field. Now the story goes on from there, David saying and runs after him. We know David actually faces him down. He casts the stone. The stone hits Goliath in the head. He falls back, and then David cuts off his head. Gory, I know. Here's the important point. When we talk about the word head in Hebrew, we're saying rosh. And to be head over is to have power over. And so in regard to Goliath, to actually take his head off would be to take off that which had power over them, right? He had power over the Israelites, causing them to fear. By taking away that he was not head over them anymore, and you can see with Goliath's sword specifically, yes. I'm looking ahead. David. Verse 52. Now the men of Israel and Judah rose and shouted and pursued the Philistines. Now I think this is interesting. Once David kills him, the fear that Israel and Judah have, it's gone. The minute that is taken care of, it's gone. And they go running after the Philistines. If you read, they take them as far as Gath, back to Goliath's hometown, which becomes a major town throughout Scripture. Now, what I want to do, and you're going to have to forgive me for a moment, because there's going to be a little bit of dead time, 2 or 3 minutes. Go ahead and do me a favor. You're going to turn to Psalm 23. As you turn to Psalm 23, I want you to think about how Psalm 23 might connect to what we just read. While you're doing that, I'm going to go out because I want to see if the moon's out yet. Be right back. So I hope you're still reading the Psalm 23. I wasn't gone that long. So I'm going to take a moment. And yes, the moon is out there right now. Happy Rosh Chodesh. We find out hopefully tomorrow whether it's the 13th month or the first month of the year. All right, so I hope, now please, hey, if you're out there online, you can pause me right now and go out and see the new moon and come back and check on this afterwards. So no issues there. We're going to continue for those that are with me right here. Psalm 23. You know it very well. In fact, we could probably recite it from memory, but I do want to look at it. Now here's my important point. I believe Psalm 23 is written after the situation that David went through, and I believe specifically it's talking about 1 Samuel 15, 16, 17, and 18. From his life, and I'm going to just make a few connections to that. So verse 1, Jehovah is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures, he leads me beside still waters, he restores my soul. Now I'm going to back up. Remember, multiple times in chapter 17, it is made a point that David is a shepherd, including the point that he is the one that takes out the shepherding staff when he goes out to battle. 2, remember that as he was going off to battle, it said he went off to a what? A brook. What was he getting in the brook? The 5 smooth stones. Notice in Psalm 23, he leads me beside still waters, right? It wouldn't be surprising in those moments that he's getting those stones that he's praying. He's preparing his soul for the battle ahead, one way or another. Going on from there, he leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Now this is important. He is going down from one mountaintop down into a valley. In this valley, he's facing Goliath. There's even a chance that literally, depending on where it is, that there could actually be in near evening or whenever where there's actually a shadow down or a darkened spot in the valley. Maybe even the shadow of Goliath himself. Though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. And I think that reality isn't it interesting that he's taking his staff, which is also his rod. It depends on how you would use it with the sheep, whether you were encouraging them to go or you were disciplining them in regard to what they were doing, right? Verse 5 and 6, more talk about later. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. That happens, I believe, in 16. You know my head with oil, my cup runs over. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of Jehovah forever. And I think, well, let's go back a moment. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Please, if you get a chance, read ahead. As you read ahead through 17 and 18, you're going to find that Saul becomes really jealous of David, and to the point that David's playing, and he throws a spear at him. And so don't be surprised that David and Saul are sharing meals together, and that as David is sharing those meals with Saul, he is dining in the presence of his enemies, right? Don't be surprised by that. But I think the important point of it is verse 6. When we're looking at it, surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of Jehovah forever. When we boil everything down of what we're looking to do for our life, that's it right there. And I don't know about you, but for me, I just want to dwell in his house forever. I don't care where in the house. That's all I want. And the reality being is, David has realized no matter what's going on, it doesn't matter if he dies in the battle with Goliath. He will still dwell in the house of Yah forever. And so the most important thing holds true. All right, so I want to sort of go back and sort of put these pieces together. What makes Saul and David different? Number one, Saul has walked away from God. We've got to be careful for ourselves every single day. Seek out repentance. Make sure our heart is right. Make sure we're walking with him. 2, let's look at David. Saul, when he comes upon something, he realizes he can't, and God's not with him. And if God's not with him, then he knows he can't. It's impossible. 3, that fear and anxiety is a greater plague than COVID-19. It spreads faster and has worse effects than the actual physical effects that can happen. That fear can be a prison in itself. It's something we've got to be very, very careful of. When we look at David, what sets David apart? Number one, because he's outside the situation and he comes, he is, in this case, a messianic figure. But what makes him different? Number one, you know what? While we might be trapped in a house, guess what? He was trapped in the field. And you might go, but he's at least outside. Yeah, when it's raining, when it's cold, when the sun's beating down, and he can't leave the sheep. He's got to stay there. So he has a lot of downtime. What do you think he's doing with his downtime? He's probably going out and practicing with the sling. He's probably getting bored. He's probably going, let's go ahead and spend some time. Where do you think he had all the time to start creating all the Psalms? In regard to singing to Yah, he had all of this time. And in that time, he took advantage of that time, right? And in that time, it prepared him for battle. Whether that battle was physical, in regard to actually using and being a shepherd and using that sling with the stones, or it was the issue of he understood that through praise and through worship and through prayer, we would go through spiritual warfare. And he was prepared for that. Again, what surprised me is he went down to those cool waters, that he took a moment and said, oh my gosh, Father, please be with me. Thank you for this moment of peace. Thank you for this moment of rest. David could see the situation from the outside, from a greater perspective, and I truly believe he could see it from Yah's perspective, right? And that's why we pray. We pray to see it from Yah's perspective, from what is he doing and why is he doing it? And it doesn't mean he's always going to answer now. But what we know is that his will, Yah's will be done one way or another. I pray in these next days, and hopefully not months, but whatever he has in place, that we are like David and we take advantage of these moments. That we spend the time giving praise, counting our blessings, knowing that he's in charge. I want to share these last verses before we close tonight. And while these verses, many of them were written after David, remember that a verse, if it's truth, is a truth. It was a truth from, he said, let there be light until the end. Whether someone wrote it down, it was still the truth. We're just going to quote Zechariah 4:16 because we know it. It's not by might, nor by power, but by your what? Spirit, says Jehovah. Connect it back to Romans, and you'll see what the issue is. As the Spirit is moving, it's not about how great we are with the sling. It's not about specifically how many stones we have. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with who will bring victory? Yah will. His time, his will. Do me a favor. We're going to turn to Isaiah 54. All right, Isaiah 54. Starting with verse 10. For the mountains shall depart and the hills be removed, but my kindness shall not depart from you, nor shall my covenant of peace be removed, says Jehovah, who has mercy on you. Jump to verse 14. In righteousness you shall be established. You shall be far from oppression, for you shall not fear. And from terror it shall not come near you. Indeed, they shall surely assemble, but not because of me. Whoever assembles against you shall fall for your sake. Verse 17. No weapon formed against you shall prosper. And every tongue which rises against you in judgment you shall condemn. This is the heritage of the servants of Jehovah. And this completely connects. Remember, not servants of Saul, the servants of Jehovah. And the righteousness is from me, says Jehovah. It didn't matter that David had a shepherd's staff, because it didn't matter how great the weapon Goliath had. It didn't matter how big he was, because our greatest weapon and our greatest shield is Yah. And there's no weapon that can measure up or even compare to him. Last few verses. Psalm 44. All right. Starting with verses 1 through 8. As we're reading it, I want you to look and see if you see connections. We have heard with our ears, O Elohim, our fathers have told us the deeds you did in the days of old. You drove out nations with your hand. With them you planted. You afflicted the peoples and cast them out. They did not gain possession of the land by their own sword, nor did their own arm save them. But it was your right hand, your arm, and the light of your countenance, because you favored them. You are my king, Elohim. Command victories for Jacob. Through you we will push down our enemies. Through your name we will trample those who rise up against us. For I will not trust in my bow, nor shall I say my sword save me. But you have saved us from our enemies, and you have put to shame those who hated us. In God we boast all day long and praise your name forever. Praise your name forever. David said, how could this Philistine come against Yah and come against his name? David understood, and this is important, guys. He understood that Yah had already had him face the bear and the lion. And you know what? COVID-19 might be our bear. COVID-19 might be our lion. It might actually be something that prepares us for something far worse in the future. We don't know. But even as we're going through it, the first thing David did is he went back and go, you know what? Yah did it before. He saved me before. He can save me again. And remembering that God doesn't change. Our deliverance is not, will he? Our deliverance is, when will he? Because it's going to happen. So as we're going through this, Remember, I'm not saying COVID-19 is Goliath. What I'm saying is the anxiety and the fear out there that we are facing is our Goliath. What we do every day. Let's be like David. Let's take advantage of our time. Stuck inside, stuck outside, it doesn't matter. We're not stuck. The prison and the stuck is when we're afraid and when we're anxious. Now, are we going to feel that way? Absolutely. I'm not going to sit here and go, oh, I don't feel anxious. I absolutely feel anxious. What is tomorrow going to be? It's a huge question mark. But when those moments come, that's when I go back to even then. That's when I go back and I start to see Adonai Imlok le'olam va'ed. That's when I go back to praise him. And what it comes down to is us not giving away our hope and our peace. I promise you, that's what wants to be stolen. And that is the light that we hold on to right now. I'm going to go and close in prayer. Father, we thank you for the moment in the future when we will look back at this moment and these days and not even believe they happened. We look forward to the day that while there's darkness right now, whether there's tears and there's fear, joy comes in the morning. Joy comes when that moment of deliverance and your mercy comes. We're just waiting for that, Father, knowing it's going to happen. So, Father, help us each morning wake up and go to the still waters and pull out our 5 smooth stones. 5 scriptures or 5 songs that we can sing as we do battle with our fears and with our anxieties, knowing that through them you'll bring victory into our life. We praise you and thank you. Amen and amen. Well, blessings, everybody. Please look on the website, hopefully tomorrow, in our Facebook page to find out if we are in month 13 or month 1. And hopefully I'll see you Shabbat through webcast or for the few that are here. So, blessings. Bye.